It begins with a sound so small it could be missed, a whisper against the vast silence, a single drop of water falling. It descends through the still air, tracing a path unseen, until it touches the surface of the ocean below. The sound it makes is soft, almost like a breath, yet in that moment, the quiet world stirs. The surface ripples outward, delicate circles moving away in widening rings, touching everything they meet, carrying a silent message of motion. This is the first drop. Or maybe not the first. For who could say when the story of water truly began? Perhaps it was here before stories themselves, before words, before memory. Maybe it existed when the earth was still a haze of dust and fire, waiting for calm to find it. The drop carries the patience of ages, the memory of clouds and rivers, and the rhythm of things that never hurry, yet never stop moving. If you were to follow this drop, you might find it drifting with the currents, slipping through blue shadows where sunlight scatters in trembling ribbons. You might see it join others, millions, billions, each with its own journey, its own small history. Together they form the sea, breathing quietly in and out, always in motion, always returning to itself. Imagine standing at the edge of that ocean. The air smells faintly of salt and thyme. The wind moves through your hair like a thought not yet formed. The water stretches beyond the horizon, endless, ancient, alive. Somewhere within it, that same drop moves, unseen but present, a tiny part of a great story still unfolding. You can almost sense it, as if the sea itself remembers, because water remembers. It carries traces of everything it has ever touched. The stone it carved, the leaf it kissed, the sky it rose from. It has no beginning and no end, only transformation. It is rain, mist, snow, ice, and ocean. It is the tear on a cheek and the dew on a morning leaf. It is both motion and rest, both giver and taker. And somewhere in that endless cycle, this drop begins again. The first drop is not just water, it is time made visible. It connects moments across centuries, from the storm that filled the first rivers to the glass of water in your hand. Every molecule has traveled through countless lives, through creatures, clouds, and continents. What you drink today might once have fallen on the scales of an ancient fish or frozen within a comet wandering the outer reaches of space. The same drop that begins this story may have drifted through the veins of the earth itself. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen. The faint rhythm you hear, that gentle pulse, could be the heartbeat of water moving beneath you, inside you, around you. It is never still. It flows through all things, the ocean, the air, the trees, your own breath. The same quiet persistence, the same endless patience. It has seen the birth of mountains and their slow return to sand. It has felt the heat of volcanoes and the chill of frozen dawns. And yet it keeps moving, keeps flowing, as though searching for something it already knows. So we begin here, with one drop falling into an endless sea, a small moment easily overlooked, yet infinite in meaning. This is where the story starts, though it has always been moving even before this moment. Water, the wanderer of worlds, the quiet keeper of time. The drop rests now within the ocean, part of something vast, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. That same drop, now cradled in the vast body of the sea, does not stay still for long. The sun warms its surface, and within that warmth, something stirs. Slowly, silently, the drop rises, drawn upward into the open sky. It turns to vapor, lighter than air, invisible to the eye yet still there, still itself. It leaves the ocean behind but carries the sea's memory within it. In this quiet transformation, the journey begins again. Up it floats, into layers of air painted with light. Around it, countless others rise too, each one carrying a tiny reflection of the world below, salt, warmth, and the faint echo of waves. They gather, merging into clouds that drift across continents. From a distance, the clouds seem to move lazily. But inside them is constant motion, the endless dance of creation and return. Over mountains they travel, gliding above peaks where air thins and the earth seems to touch the heavens. Some drops cool and fall as snow, settling softly on silent ridges. There they rest, trapped in ice for years, perhaps centuries. But even in stillness they are never lost. The sun will find them again one day, and they will melt, trickling down through stone and soil, carving paths that become streams. The streams gather, growing into rivers, their voices rising as they run faster, laughing their way down the mountain toward the waiting sea. Every bend of a river is a story. Every drop that flows within it carries the memory of where it came from, and a hint of where it's going. Through forests it moves, weaving between roots and rocks, feeding moss, filling leaves, cooling the earth beneath your feet. It touches everything and keeps going. The river never truly ends. Even when it reaches the ocean, it only returns home to begin again. And in this journey, water finds its way into all living things. A drop that once rested in a glacier may now pulse through the veins of a tree. Another may be drawn up into a flower, hidden inside its petals, waiting to meet the morning sun. A few may drift higher still, carried on the wind, until they fall as rain across a distant plain, a quiet reunion of earth and sky. But water's path does not stop with rivers or rain. It finds us too. When you breathe, you inhale tiny traces of vapor that once drifted over distant seas. When you drink, you take in the memory of clouds and mountains. And when your heart beats, it moves water through your body, through your blood, through every living cell. You are in many ways a river in human form. Inside you, that ancient traveler continues its endless motion. It listens, it adapts, it remembers. Think of it. The water in your body may once have fallen on a field of grass thousands of years ago. It may have drifted through the lungs of a bird or hidden deep within a coral reef. It may have slept inside a seed, waiting for life to begin. Each molecule has moved through time and form, through places both seen and forgotten, carrying with it the quiet story of existence. Even as you exhale, the water within you escapes again, a faint mist joining the air, invisible but real, soon to rise into a cloud once more. You give back what you have borrowed. The same drop that once touched the sea may someday return to it through you. There is no end to its journey, only a graceful continuation, an eternal rhythm that connects everything that breathes, grows, and flows. If you listen carefully, beside a stream, under rain, or within the silence of your own heartbeat, you can almost hear the whisper of its movement. It's the same whisper that has drifted through the ages, through creatures and continents, through beginnings and endings. It tells us that nothing is ever truly gone, only changed. That every life, every story, every breath is part of something older and larger than itself. The drop that once fell into the ocean now lives everywhere. It has crossed the skies, climbed the mountains, slipped through roots, flowed through rivers, rested in clouds, and moved through us. It carries the touch of everything it has met, and yet it remains what it always was. Water, the quiet traveler, timeless and tireless. And so, the story continues, not as a single path, but as countless threads weaving through the world, through air and stone and skin. Water does not ask where it goes or how far. It simply moves, and in that motion, it teaches us what it means to belong everywhere and nowhere at once. The eternal traveler flows on, unseen but always present, carrying the heartbeat of the planet in... Listen. Before words, before thought, there is sound. The steady hush of something older than language. It might be the murmur of rain against leaves, the slow rhythm of waves brushing the shore, or the whisper of a stream curling around stones. These are not just sounds of nature. They are the breathing of the world itself. When you listen to water, you are hearing the pulse of life, the rhythm that has never stopped. There is something deeply human about this listening. Long before cities rose, people gathered by rivers and lakes, drawn by the same sound that still soothes us today. The gentle patterns of water have always told us we belong here, that the earth is alive and we are part of its heartbeat. Even now, when we close our eyes beside the sea, the sound reaches into us, slowing our thoughts, aligning them with a slower, deeper tempo. It is not magic. It is memory. The ancient recognition of something that has always been within us. The human brain responds to water in ways that science is only beginning to understand. The steady repetition of waves, rain, and streams quiets the noise inside the mind. It mirrors the rhythm of our breath, the pulse in our chest. When water moves, it seems to move through us too, carrying away tension, returning us to stillness. Each drop that falls or wave that curls is like a gentle reminder. Slow down, breathe, exist. If you stand beside a flowing river and truly listen, you might notice that its voice is never the same twice. Sometimes it rushes, playful and quick, tumbling over rocks with bright laughter. Other times it moves slowly, low and deep, like a secret shared in confidence. There are pauses and whispers, ripples and sighs, all blending into a harmony so natural that your body begins to follow it without effort. Your shoulders ease. Your breath finds a rhythm that matches the water's. You become, for a moment, part of its calm conversation. Rain, too, has its own language. It begins softly tapping at windows or leaves like a kind hand knocking on your door. Then it grows, filling the air with its quiet percussion, each drop striking the ground with purpose. It is both background and present, something you feel more than hear. Rain has the power to make silence audible, to remind you that even stillness can have texture. When you listen to rain, you listen to thousands of tiny beginnings happening all at once. The ocean, on the other hand, speaks with the voice of eternity. Its waves roll in and out like the earth's breathing, unhurried and sure. To listen to the sea is to hear infinity repeat itself. Every wave that breaks seems new, yet it carries the same timeless rhythm as the one before it. The sound of the tide can make you forget where you end and the world begins. It is both vast and intimate, both distant and deeply personal. It tells you that you are small but not insignificant, just one part of a greater movement that has no need for hurry. Even the quietest forms of water have a voice. The soft drip of melting ice, the gurgle of a spring, the low hum of a lake stirred by wind. Each sound has its own shape, its own mood, its own story. Listening becomes a form of meditation, not about silence, but about attention. When you give yourself to the sound of water, you stop trying to control the moment. You simply let it unfold. And maybe that's why the sound feels like healing. The mind, so used to rushing ahead, slows down to match the world's natural pace. The constant chatter of thought fades into the background, replaced by rhythm, by flow, by the feeling of being part of something that has no edges. You realize that calm doesn't come from stillness alone. It comes from listening deeply to what moves. In every droplet, stream, and wave, there is a message. Life flows, and you are flowing with it. Water doesn't resist, it adapts. It bends, it carries, it shapes, and it sings. When we listen to it, we remember how to be gentle yet strong, flexible yet steady, quiet yet alive. So listen again. The sound of water is not only outside you, it is within. In the blood that moves through your veins, in the breath that softens your chest, in the rhythm that keeps you here now. Every heartbeat is an echo of the same rhythm you hear in the rain. Every inhale and exhale a tiny tide, rising and falling, endlessly returning. Water has always been speaking. All we need to do is listen. Some stories don't begin with a clear start. They rise slowly like mist from the surface of a quiet lake until they reveal what was always there. Water's story is one of those. We've felt its presence, listened to its voice, and followed its journey through rivers, clouds, and our own breath. Yet one question now stirs softly, like a ripple forming in still water. Where did it come from? How did this eternal traveler first appear in a universe once dry and silent? When we look at a river or a raindrop, we're seeing something ancient beyond imagination. Water is older than the earth itself. Long before oceans shimmered under the sun, before the first winds swept across this planet, there were clouds of dust and ice drifting through space, leftovers from exploding stars. Somewhere in that cosmic storm, hydrogen met oxygen, and the simplest, most essential molecule of all took shape. Tiny crystals of ice formed inside asteroids and comets, carrying water through the endless dark. These were the seeds of oceans, moving quietly between stars, waiting for a world to welcome them. Imagine that. Every drop you've ever touched once traveled through the cold silence of space. Some of it may have formed inside distant nebulae where stars were born. Some may have ridden on comets that struck the early Earth billions of years ago, melting into pools that shimmered under a newborn sky. When those ancient rains first fell, the world was still young and raw, its surface rough and glowing. Yet in that moment something remarkable began. A planet learned to hold water, and life was given a stage to begin its play. The ocean became Earth's first storyteller. It gathered sunlight, minerals, and movement, mixing them into patterns that would one day become living things. In its depths, chemistry turned into biology. Molecules began to organize, to sense, to change. Every form of life that has ever lived, from the smallest bacteria to the tallest tree, owes its existence to that first watery experiment. Water wasn't just a witness to creation, it was the medium that made creation possible. When we say life began in water, it's not only a scientific truth, it's a poetic one. The same currents that once carried the first strands of life now carry whispers of their descendants. Every wave, every drop holds traces of those early beginnings. Water remembers not in words but in cycles. It has seen the birth and death of mountains, the rise and fall of civilizations, the quiet persistence of forests and deserts. Each time it returns to the sea, it brings back a record of everywhere it has been. Think of rain falling on ancient stone. It carries particles of dust that once lay buried deep beneath the surface. When that rain joins a river, it carries those minerals onward into oceans, into clouds, into air, into you. Every cycle writes another line in the long story of the Earth. Water has always been the planet's diary, written in motion rather than ink. Even now, scientists look into the cosmos searching for water, because where water flows, life might follow. Telescopes scan the skies for the faint glimmer of ice on distant planets and moons. Space probes touch down on worlds far from ours, scraping frozen soil, hoping to find even a trace of what we know so well. It's as if by finding water elsewhere we might find a reflection of ourselves, a hint that life, in some distant corner of the universe, is also listening to rain. And yet, even as science explains, wonder remains. Knowing that water may have come from stardust doesn't make it less magical. If anything, it deepens the mystery. To think that the glass of water on your table holds atoms forged in the hearts of stars, that every sip connects you to galaxies, is to see the universe not as distant, but as intimate. Every molecule inside you has traveled farther than you ever will. You are, in a very real way, made of cosmic rain. The story of water is the story of everything that has ever been alive. It flows through the veins of the planet and through the veins of every creature that has ever breathed. It has no allegiance, no destination, only motion and memory. When it falls as rain, when it freezes into ice, when it evaporates into air, it continues the story. One that began long before us and will continue long after. So we return to that first drop, the one that fell into the sea, starting our tale. But now we know it didn't begin there. Its journey started among stars, traveled through time, crossed space, shaped worlds, and became the heartbeat of life itself. The drop is not only a beginning, it is before the oceans, before the planets, before even the first grains of dust began to drift through the newborn universe, there was only darkness and energy. The universe had just taken its first breath, an explosion of light and expansion so vast that time itself seemed to awaken. Out of that blinding beginning, matter began to cool and settle. Tiny particles, once wild and free, began to combine, forming the simplest of elements, hydrogen first, then helium. These were the universe's first building blocks, the alphabet from which all things would someday be written. Hydrogen, light, invisible, endlessly patient, filled the growing universe. It was everywhere, forming clouds so immense they stretched for light years. These clouds were silent for eons, but within them gravity was at work, pulling atoms closer and closer until the first stars were born. Inside these stars, the heat and pressure were unimaginable. The young universe, still in its infancy, learned how to create. Within those fiery cores, hydrogen began to fuse, two atoms merging to form helium, releasing light and warmth into the cosmic dark. For millions of years, this was the song of creation. Every star burned with the same rhythm, each one a furnace where matter became light. Yet hydrogen and helium alone were not enough to make a world like ours. Something more was needed. Heavier elements, more complex structures, ingredients for life. The first stars were enormous, but short-lived. When they reached the end of their fuel, they collapsed and exploded in bursts of unimaginable power. Supernovae, the universe's first fireworks. In those final moments, new elements were born. Among them was oxygen, the silent partner that would one day meet hydrogen to form the simplest, most essential compound of all, water. Picture it. A universe once filled only with light and gas, now scattered with dust rich in oxygen, carbon, and iron. The debris of dying stars floated through the cosmos, seeding it with potential. Every explosion was both an ending and a beginning. The ashes of those ancient suns became the ingredients for planets, for oceans, for you. Somewhere in that vast expanse, hydrogen met oxygen for the first time. The meeting was quiet, almost humble compared to the violence that birthed them, yet it was a union that would shape everything to come. Two atoms of hydrogen joined with one of oxygen, creating a bond so simple yet so stable that it could endure the trials of space and time. In that moment, the first water molecule was born, the first whisper of life's possibility. Imagine those early molecules drifting through the dark, fragile yet eternal. They gathered in clouds of ice and vapor, forming on dust grains that floated between the stars. Under the chill of deep space, these molecules froze, clinging together, waiting. Across millions of years, they became part of comets, asteroids, and icy worlds orbiting far from newborn stars. The universe, once hot and fierce, had learned to create something gentle. It's almost poetic. The idea that water, the element of flow and softness, was forged from the fire of collapsing stars. Out of destruction came the promise of calm. Out of chaos came the possibility of life. When you hold a drop of water, you hold the memory of that first union. The meeting of elements born in the hearts of stars long dead. You are touching a piece of the universe's earliest dream, and yet even in that ancient time, water's story was still only beginning. As galaxies formed and spun into shape, these icy molecules traveled with them, scattered across billions of miles. They drifted through nebulae, glowing clouds of gas and dust, where new stars were taking shape. Around those young suns, disks of material began to spin, flattening into rings from which planets would eventually form. Inside those disks, water existed both as vapor close to the warmth of the star and as ice farther away, frozen into comets waiting in the outer dark. It is from this cosmic balance, fire and ice, heat and distance, that the future oceans of countless worlds were born. The same chemistry that once filled the void of space became the source of rivers, clouds, and rain. Every planet that formed carried within it traces of this universal gift. Some lost it to heat or gravity, others kept it close. And one small, rocky world in a quiet corner of the galaxy would someday be covered by it. The blue planet we call home. But in this moment of the story, Earth does not yet exist. There is only the quiet drift of particles and the slow weaving of cosmic dust. The stars shine brighter than ever, and within their glow, water waits. It has no ocean to call home, no mountain to fall upon, no living thing to drink it. Yet its presence already promises what is to come. It is the breath of the universe, soft, unseen, eternal. So when we ask, where did water come from? The answer reaches far beyond our world. It came from the stars. It came from the first breath of the cosmos, from the balance between creation and destruction. It was born in light and carried through darkness. Every drop we touch is a memory of that beginning, a tiny echo of the first moment when the universe learned to create something that could endure. The story of water is, in truth, the story of everything, a reminder that even in the coldest depths of space, life was already being imagined. Long after the universe took its first breath, the stars continued their work. They were not merely lights in the sky. They were furnaces of creation, each one a forge where the raw materials of existence were being shaped. Inside those ancient stars, simple hydrogen was transformed into something more complex, something new. And among those newborn elements, oxygen began to appear. The breath of future worlds, the invisible thread that would one day bind with hydrogen to create water. Oxygen was not born gently. It came from chaos and fire. When massive stars reached the end of their lives, they imploded, crushing themselves under their own weight. In that brief, violent collapse, atoms collided with such intensity that new elements sprang into existence. Then came the explosion, a supernova, flinging those elements across space in a radiant storm of dust and light. The universe glittered with the remains of these stellar deaths. In the debris of destruction, new potential was scattered, waiting to be gathered again. Those explosions filled space with the dust of creation. Every grain floating through the void carried the memory of a star. Iron, carbon, silicon, and oxygen mixed together in cosmic ash. Over time, these clouds of debris cooled and thickened, forming the building blocks for future stars and planets. The universe was recycling itself, turning death into the promise of new life. And somewhere in that quiet recycling, water began to take form. Hydrogen, the universe's first-born element, met oxygen, one of its youngest. Together they formed something entirely new. On tiny dust grains drifting in the coldness between stars, atoms came together in frozen silence. The temperature there was unimaginably low, hundreds of degrees below zero, but that chill was perfect for creation. Water molecules clung to the dust, building up layer by layer until they became tiny specks of ice. Each one a microscopic seed, glimmering faintly in the starlight. Imagine the beauty of that. Countless icy particles forming in the darkness, floating freely through clouds that stretched across light years. These clouds were the nurseries of galaxies, and within them stars were being born again. Around these young stars, disks of gas and dust began to swirl, the raw beginnings of solar systems. Inside these disks, water vapor mingled with dust, forming icy clumps that would later become comets and asteroids. The universe, still in its youth, had learned how to preserve water within stone and ice. For millions of years, these icy bodies drifted quietly through the emptiness, far from the heat of any sun. They carried water as if it were treasure, fragile, precious, waiting for a home. Some would remain in the cold forever, orbiting distant stars in silence. Others would be drawn inward, pulled by gravity toward newly formed worlds. And when those comets struck young planets, they brought with them their frozen cargo, delivering the ingredients for oceans, clouds, and rain. This is how many scientists believe Earth received much of its water. In its earliest days, our planet was hot and chaotic, its surface molten and inhospitable. Any water that existed then would have boiled away into space. But later, during a period of intense bombardment known as the Late Heavy Bombardment, comets and asteroids rained down upon the Earth. Each impact released more than destruction. It delivered life's most essential element. Drop by drop, impact by impact, the planet began to cool and collect the water that would one day cover its surface. Think about that for a moment. The water that now flows in rivers, falls as rain, and fills your cup may have once been locked inside a comet that traveled for billions of years through the cold dark of space. It may have formed from ice around a dying star, shattered, and then found its way here, across unimaginable distances, through explosions and silence, through time itself. Every sip, every wave, every storm is made of stardust and memory. It's a humbling thought that the blue oceans of Earth were born from the ashes of ancient stars. That the same molecules inside your body were once frozen in cosmic ice, carried by comets older than our planet. The chain of creation is long, but it never breaks. What the stars began, the planets continued. What fire destroyed, ice preserved. Out of that balance, life found its chance. Even today, the universe still creates water. Observations of distant nebulae reveal shimmering traces of ice forming on dust grains, just as they did billions of years ago. Comets still wander the outer regions of our solar system, their frozen tails glinting in sunlight when they draw near. They are relics of our beginnings, silent messengers reminding us that the universe is both ancient and alive. When you look up at the night sky, remember that you are seeing more than stars. You are seeing the source of every drop that ever existed. Those points of light are the ancestors of oceans, rivers, and clouds. You are part of their story, a being made of the same elements forged in their hearts. You breathe oxygen that once lived inside a star. You drink water that once drifted as ice between galaxies. The stars gave us light, but they also gave us the means to feel, to grow, to exist. They left behind not only dust and heat, but the chemistry of connection. And among all the gifts they scattered into the universe, none was more transformative, more gentle, or more essential than water, the stardust that learned how to flow. Long before the earth had an ocean, before there were winds or skies or even a sun bright enough to warm them, there were grains of ice drifting in the dark. They floated through the newborn galaxy like frozen whispers, remnants of dying stars and the silent chemistry of space. Each grain carried the memory of creation, hydrogen from the universe's first breath, oxygen from the hearts of ancient stars. When those two elements met and bonded, they formed something fragile yet eternal. Water, sealed in crystal form, waiting for worlds to be born. These tiny shards of ice traveled across light years, drawn by gravity's patient hand. Around young stars they gathered into disks of dust and rock, the raw material of planets. The early solar system was no quiet nursery. It was a place of fire and collision, where asteroids slammed into each other, and comets blazed through the void, trailing long tails of vaporized ice. In this chaos, water's journey continued. Some of it clung to the dust that would one day become Earth. Some of it hid in the frozen hearts of comets, waiting for the right moment to fall. As the young Earth began to form, it was nothing like the blue planet we know. It was molten and restless, wrapped in a poisonous haze. Yet even in this inferno, the story of water was unfolding. Deep beneath the fiery crust, hydrogen and oxygen trapped in minerals began to unite. Steam hissed through cracks in the surface. It was as though the planet itself was exhaling, a first hot breath that would one day cool into rain. Then came the bombardment. For millions of years, icy comets and water-rich asteroids rained down from the outer reaches of the solar system. They struck the young Earth with unimaginable force, delivering more and more of that ancient water. Each impact added droplets to the growing collection, turning a world of fire into one of steam and storms. Slowly, the heat faded, the crust hardened, and the first rains fell, perhaps for centuries without pause. The water that had wandered through galaxies finally found a home. Imagine those early days, the sky thick with clouds, the ground boiling, rivers of liquid rock cooling under sheets of endless rain. It was a time when everything was in motion, continents not yet formed, seas not yet stable. But even then, the oceans were beginning to take shape. They spread like silver mirrors, catching the dim light of a young sun. In those waters, the seeds of life would someday stir. But water did not belong only to Earth. Across the solar system, it left traces of its passage in the icy crusts of moons, in the vapor plumes of Saturn's Enceladus, in the ancient riverbeds etched into Mars. Everywhere water touched, it left a promise. Where I flow, life may follow. The scientists who study these distant worlds speak of isotopes and molecular ratios, of clues frozen in meteorites. Yet beneath all their data lies a story as poetic as it is scientific. The story of endurance. Water has crossed every barrier time could build. It survived explosions of dying stars, the birth of new ones, the collisions of planets, the vacuum of space. It has never ceased to flow, only changed its form. Ice, vapor, liquid, and then back again. Every glass of water you drink is a collection of memories. Some of its molecules may have once been part of a comet that streaked through the sky before Earth was born. Some may have been trapped in the mantle for billions of years, only to return to the surface through volcanic breath. And some might have been sipped by a dinosaur, a bird, or another person centuries ago. Water has no concept of time. It simply moves, reshaping the world around it. The long journey from stardust to ocean is not just the story of chemistry. It is the story of connection. The hydrogen in your body is older than the stars themselves, and the water flowing through your veins has traveled further than any explorer could dream. You are, in a quiet way, a continuation of that cosmic voyage, and perhaps that is why water feels sacred. When you touch it, you touch the universe's memory. When it rains, it is not just weather. It is the cosmos returning home. As the ancient ice melted into seas, the stage was set for something extraordinary. The world had cooled, the storms had calmed, and the oceans shimmered under a gentler sun. The long journey was ending, but a new one was about to begin. One that would transform this planet forever. For in the depths of those newborn oceans, the next chapter of water's story was quietly preparing to unfold, the story of life itself. There was a moment, quiet, slow, and immeasurable, when the fire of the young earth softened into light. The endless storms that had battered the planet began to ease, the skies clearing from darkness to a dim silver glow. And beneath that newborn light, the oceans opened their eyes. Water, once scattered across the cosmos, had found its resting place. It gathered in low basins, spreading outward, shimmering as though the planet itself was beginning to breathe. From the chaos of creation, the blue world was born. Imagine standing on that ancient shore, though no human eyes yet existed to see it. The air would still have been thick with steam, the scent of minerals and metal rising from the warm ground. The sky above was pale and vast, tinted with the faintest blush of sunlight breaking through. All around, the sound of water filled the silence. Waves meeting rock, rain meeting sea, droplets falling into infinity. It was not merely a sound. It was a heartbeat. Earth had begun to live in rhythm. These first oceans were not calm or gentle. They were wild and powerful, stretching over a landscape still reshaping itself with each passing century. Continents were only beginning to form, fragile islands of stone surrounded by endless water. Volcanoes pierced through the waves, releasing plumes of steam and gas that fed the atmosphere. Lightning flashed across the horizon, and the sea responded with its own glow, the shimmering reflection of creation in motion. Every drop of that water carried a memory of its cosmic journey, and now, united at last, it began to write a new story, one of transformation. The ocean's surface became a mirror to the heavens. As sunlight reached it for the first time, the planet turned blue. It was a sight unlike anything that had ever existed. A world wrapped in color, alive with movement. The same hue that now defines our home, that deep, tranquil blue, began in that moment. From space, if one could have looked down then, Earth would have shone like a sapphire adrift in the dark, glowing softly with promise. This was more than a geological milestone. It was the emotional birth of a planet. Water was no longer just a traveler. It had become the lifeblood of a world. It began to sculpt coastlines, carve valleys, and smooth the jagged scars of its violent past. Each wave that crashed upon the young rocks carried away fragments of time, breaking down mountains into sand, blending sky and soil into harmony. Slowly, the planet's surface cooled, the seas deepened, and the first whispers of balance began to emerge. In those vast oceans, a delicate dance of chemistry began to unfold. The heat from volcanic vents met the cool embrace of deep water, creating conditions for reactions that would one day give rise to life. Carbon and nitrogen, sulfur and iron, elements scattered by dying stars, mixed within the sea's depths. The ocean was both cradle and canvas, holding the ingredients of creation within its liquid heart. Though silent, it was busy, and though lifeless to the eye, it pulsed with potential. The transformation was not only physical, but spiritual. The earth, once a sphere of flame and stone, now reflected the light of its star. Its oceans became a sanctuary of calm and energy, a place where gravity, sunlight, and chemistry worked together in perfect rhythm. From that moment on, water would define this world, shaping its landscapes, governing its weather, and nurturing everything that would come after. If you listen closely today, you can still hear that ancient rhythm. It echoes in the crash of ocean waves, in the murmur of rivers, in the quiet drip of rain against your window. It is the same pulse that began billions of years ago when the first oceans spread their wings across the earth. That rhythm connects us all to the past, to the stars, and to the quiet beginnings of everything we know. For all its vastness, the ocean carries intimacy. Each droplet that glimmers on the surface once belonged to another age. Some came from volcanic steam, some from cometary ice, some from the breath of the planet itself. Together they became one body, bound by gravity, stirred by wind, illuminated by light. It is almost as if water remembered every place it had been and brought them all together here. The blue miracle was not a single instant, but a slow awakening. Day by day, as the rain softened and the skies cleared, the reflection of the sun deepened. The earth began to cool enough to hold its oceans steady, and the water settled into its eternal cycle, evaporating, condensing, falling, and returning. It was a rhythm of renewal, a system that would endure through all the ages to come. And in that balance, a fragile peace began. The seas grew quiet, the atmosphere cleared, and sunlight danced freely on the waves. The world had changed forever. What had once been only stone and shadow was now a realm of motion and reflection. The planet's surface shimmered with life's potential, though life itself had yet to awaken. Looking back through time, we can only marvel. Out of chaos came beauty. Out of silence came song. The same elements that once drifted between the stars now moved together as one, a planet wrapped in blue, singing softly in the dark. That color, that shimmer, became the signature of home. No other world, at least as far as we know, glows quite like ours. The blue miracle is not merely water's triumph. It is the earth's first expression of peace, its first whisper of possibility. And though billions of years have passed, that miracle endures. Every time you see the ocean stretch toward the horizon, you are seeing the same light that first touched this world's newborn waves. You are seeing the moment when the earth became alive. The earth was young, fiery, and restless. Its surface churned with molten rock, glowing under the unrelenting heat of its forming core. Volcanoes belched gas and ash, painting the skies in thick clouds of smoke. The land was jagged and raw, every surface scorched and unstable. It was a world inhospitable to life as we know it, yet within this chaos, water was quietly gathering its power. The first rains began to fall, not gentle drops, but torrents of steam condensed from the planet's thick atmosphere. In these moments, the ocean was born. The rain came from vapor rising from the cooling crust and from the early atmosphere, rich in hydrogen and oxygen. It fell endlessly, as if the heavens themselves were testing the young world. Streams of molten rock met the cold touch of water, hissing and steaming in an eternal battle of fire and flow. Yet the water endured, gathering in low basins and craters, gradually forming pools that would merge into vast seas. Each impact shaped the surface, carving the beginnings of continents, smoothing the scars of early collisions, and cooling the planet's blistered skin. In this primordial dance, water was both sculptor and witness. It bore the memory of every drop that had traveled from distant stars and icy comets, now collected into one restless ocean. Steam rose from the surface, forming thick clouds that circled the planet, returning as rain in a cycle that would continue forever. The ocean was not still, it was alive in motion. Currents swirled beneath the waves, carrying minerals and heat from the planet's interior outward. The early ocean was a mirror to the molten world beneath, reflecting the glow of volcanic fire and the faint light of a young sun, illuminating the first blue of a world that had never known calm. Every collision with the early Earth added to the water's story. Asteroids and icy comets brought fresh supply, their frozen interiors releasing ancient molecules into the growing seas. Each addition was subtle yet monumental. Slowly, over millions of years, the ocean deepened and stabilized. Its surface caught the sunlight, shimmering with hints of reflection and depth, turning Earth into a jewel suspended in the darkness of space. This first ocean was also a teacher. It demonstrated patience, persistence, and adaptation. Water collected in depressions, finding paths around obstacles, eroding fragile rock, and pooling wherever the planet allowed. It absorbed the heat of molten land, cooled volcanic surfaces, and began regulating the planet's temperature. The ocean set the stage for life not by rushing, but by enduring. Its calm persistence over eons transformed the hostile into the habitable. Even as it gathered, the ocean began a subtle symphony of motion. Waves lapped against newly forming shores. Tides rose and fell under the influence of a young moon, still settling into orbit. Currents formed, flowing between nascent continents, carrying nutrients and minerals. The water was a global circulatory system, linking every part of the surface in a quiet, unseen rhythm. It responded to gravity, heat, and wind, shaping the early climate even before the first air currents could breathe freely. The chemical richness of this water was extraordinary. It contained elements delivered from comets and asteroids, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and a trace of precious metals. Dissolved gases, trapped from the volcanic outgassing of the early crust, gave the ocean a unique, life-ready chemistry. Though lifeless at this moment, the ocean was fertile. It held in suspension the ingredients that would one day interact in delicate ways to spark the first living cells. The water itself was a cradle, patiently preparing for life that had not yet emerged. Every drop in this ancient ocean was connected to the vastness of space and time. The hydrogen within it had been present at the universe's birth. Oxygen had been forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. Comets had carried ice across light years to join the forming seas. The ocean was therefore not only a feature of Earth. It was a continuation of the universe's long story, a place where cosmic processes converged to create something unique, something enduring, something capable of harboring life. The ocean's scale was staggering. Its expanse touched every horizon, spilling into every lowland and basin. It reflected the first stars in the night sky, a canvas for light and shadow. Yet it was intimate as well. Every interaction with the land reshaped the surface. Every wave whispered against rocks and ridges. Every rainstorm left a mark. It was both a world and a world-maker, a single entity yet composed of countless droplets, each carrying its own journey and memory, and still, the ocean was just beginning. Its motion, its depth, and its chemistry were laying the groundwork for everything that would follow. It cooled the planet, absorbed energy, sculpted the continents, and prepared the atmosphere. It was patient, persistent, and immeasurably powerful. The ocean had transformed Earth from molten chaos into a world with the potential for balance, for life, for the unfolding of stories yet to be imagined. In the quiet moments, one could imagine the ocean listening, holding the echoes of comets, stars, and the first rains. Its waves carried the memory of every collision, every spark of heat, and every molecule of water that had ever existed. The ocean was not merely a body of water. It was the earth learning to breathe, to remember, and to nurture. It was the first step in turning a violent, molten world into a home. The ocean had formed, vast and restless, shimmering under a young sun, ready to shape continents, cradle the atmosphere, and embrace the first stirrings of life. It was a beginning that would never truly end, a continuous, eternal rhythm that carries the memory of stars, comets, and the universe itself flowing in every drop, reflecting water does not merely rest, it moves. It flows, it seeps, it carves. As the young oceans stabilized, rivers began to form, spilling over the emerging land. Streams wound through valleys and craters, eroding rock, carrying sediment, and shaping the surface with patient insistence. Mountains were not only built by tectonic forces, but also revealed by water's touch. Their jagged peaks softened, their sharp edges rounded. Every current, every raindrop was a sculptor, etching the story of Earth into stone. The first rivers were humble at first, trickles descending from nascent highlands, seeking the lowest paths. Yet as rainfall continued, as glaciers advanced and retreated, these trickles became streams, and streams became mighty rivers. They cut channels through rock, forming canyons and gorges, deepening valleys that would cradle life in their shadows. Over millions of years, the movement of water turned hardness into fluidity, reshaping the land with a rhythm as old as the planet itself. Even erosion is a form of creation. Water did not destroy the young earth. It revealed it. It exposed layers of rock that held the history of volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and shifting plates. Sediments carried by rivers collected in basins, forming the beginnings of fertile plains, the stages on which future ecosystems would arise. Every particle of sand and clay is a record of water's patient hand, a testament to the way fluidity can mold even the most stubborn of substances. The oceans, too, played a quiet but powerful role in shaping stone. Waves lapped against cliffs, wearing them down, sculpting beaches, and depositing minerals along the shores. Tides, influenced by the young moon, moved tirelessly, shifting sediments, polishing rock surfaces, and forging coastlines with invisible patience. Even underwater, currents stirred, carrying sand and gravel, carving canyons into the seabed, shaping trenches that would one day influence climate, habitats, and currents. Water was both artisan and engineer, designing the stage for life long before life appeared. Glaciers joined the work with immense, deliberate force. Ice flowed like slow rivers over land, grinding rock beneath, carrying debris for miles, and depositing it as moraines, valleys, and plains. These frozen rivers created patterns and formations that would define landscapes for eons. In their retreat, they left behind lakes and basins, feeding rivers and shaping drainage systems. Water, in all its forms, was a patient planner, laying the groundwork for the planet's future with quiet, enduring artistry. Rivers and streams were more than sculptors. They were connectors. Each channel linked highlands to lowlands, mountains to oceans, continents to basins. Water carried minerals and nutrients along these paths, depositing them in new places, enriching soils, and subtly transforming the chemical composition of the land. Every flow, every flood, was a conveyor belt, moving the ingredients of life from place to place. Water was both sculptor and messenger, shaping stone while spreading the seeds of possibility. Even the smallest droplets contributed to this transformation. Raindrops falling on rock begin a process called weathering, slowly breaking down minerals, creating soil, and producing landscapes that are malleable enough to host life. Water seeps into cracks, freezes, expands, and fractures rock, repeating the process over millennia. Mountains may rise by tectonic force, but they are refined and softened by water's patient rhythm. Hills and valleys, cliffs and plains, all bear its signature. Volcanoes, too, were influenced by water. Rain falling on molten rock-cooled surfaces, while rivers and oceans carried heat away from volcanic plains. Water interacted with minerals, forming new rocks and shaping the chemical foundation of the land. Hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor, where water met molten rock, created chemical gradients that would later support life. Even in these violent intersections, water was both moderator and transformer, turning energy into structure, chaos into order. The Shaper of Stone is not merely a story of erosion and flow. It is a story of time. Water moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, but over millions of years it can reshape continents. Mountains rise and fall, valleys deepen, coastlines extend or recede. Water teaches that force need not be sudden to be powerful. Its patience is its power, and its persistence leaves marks that endure longer than any human lifespan. Every landscape on Earth carries traces of this shaping hand, a subtle fingerprint of movement, rhythm, and care. Even today, water continues this work. Rivers carve new paths, waves shape beaches, glaciers grind down mountains, and rainfall transforms valleys. The same force that sculpted the young Earth continues to remind us that creation is ongoing. Rocks are not static. Landscapes are living, breathing histories of water's journey. Every stone, every cliff, every canyon is a page in Earth's memoir, written in fluid motion, patient and deliberate. Water's shaping of stone also carries an emotional resonance. It teaches humility and respect. Mountains may seem eternal, but water will outlast them. Valleys may appear static, yet they are ever-changing under its influence. By observing water's interaction with the land, we learn about balance, patience, and the beauty of transformation. Water molds not only stone but understanding, inviting awe for the processes that continue unseen, shaping the world beneath our feet. In the early Earth, water's artistry set the stage for everything that followed. Continents began to rise, rivers carved paths to the seas, coastlines stretched and contracted, and valleys filled with nutrient-rich soil. Every shift, every ripple, every flow was part of a grand design that would nurture life. Stone became landscape, and landscape became habitat. The Shaper of Stone had done its work, quietly, persistently, reverently, preparing the world for the miracle that water itself would soon. Water does not rest on the ground alone. It rises, it ascends, it becomes air itself. From the first oceans, streams, and lakes, vapor lifted toward the skies, forming clouds that drifted across the young Earth. These clouds were the planet's breath, linking sea and land, heat and cold, motion and stillness. They brought rain, storms, and fog, the first whispers of a climate in balance, the earliest sign that the planet could regulate itself through water's subtle, unseen rhythm. In the early atmosphere, gases released from volcanoes mingled with the rising steam. Carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and trace elements combined with water vapor to form clouds thick and heavy with promise. The air was dense, warm, and dynamic, constantly circulating under the influence of a sun that had yet to settle into its steady shine. Water in the sky became both actor and observer, shaping winds, moderating temperature, and distributing energy across the planet. It was a force of subtle power, invisible yet essential, a mediator between fire, rock, and the growing oceans below. The first rainfall was relentless. It fell as torrents on molten land, steam rising from impact craters and cooling lava. These storms reshaped the surface, filling basins, carving valleys, and depositing minerals that rivers would carry outward. Water in the sky connected every part of the earth in a delicate cycle, evaporating from oceans, condensing into clouds, and returning as rain. This rhythm was more than motion. It was communication, the pulse of a planet learning to balance itself. Clouds carried water across continents, over mountains, through deserts yet to exist. In their movement, they distributed not only moisture, but the potential for life, shaping habitats even before life could claim them. They transported heat, cooled the surface, and formed the first patterns of weather. Wind and water danced together, creating currents in the air as rivers did on land. The atmosphere became a partner in creation, an invisible hand sculpted by water's gentle persistence. Lightning flashed within these clouds, a reminder of energy released in the growing atmosphere. Electric charge interacted with nitrogen and other gases, creating chemical reactions that enriched the air and the oceans alike. Water in the sky was both a messenger and a participant, carrying oxygen and hydrogen through condensation, precipitation, and evaporation. Every drop that fell from these early clouds had already traveled through cycles of heat, pressure, and motion. A traveler connecting ocean to sky, land to planet. Fog and mist hovered over newly formed seas and lakes, softening the harsh light of a young sun. They blurred the lines between sky and water, between sea and land, creating a gentle, enveloping world where the atmosphere and oceans were inseparable. It was in this liminal space, between water and air, that the first subtle interactions began to prepare the planet for life. Temperature gradients formed, currents developed, and clouds released rain in a slow, methodical pattern that would one day become seasonal cycles. Through evaporation, water lifted heat from the oceans, cooling the surface and redistributing energy. Through condensation, it stored energy in clouds, ready to release it as rain and storms. Through precipitation, it nourished the land, filling rivers, lakes, and basins. Every step was a precise, invisible choreography, a balance between forces that had no consciousness, but acted as if in harmony. The atmosphere was alive in its own way, guided by water's patient, omnipresent hand. Even the first winds were born from this process. As water vapor rose and cooled, pressure differences formed, creating motion across the globe. These winds carried clouds and moisture far from their origin, delivering the elements of rain to every corner of the planet. Water in the sky became a conveyor of connection, linking oceans to continents, mountains to valleys, creating the first patterns of climate. Its movement was gentle yet unyielding, shaping the world with an invisible brush. From this interplay, Earth developed its first balance of climate. Temperature gradients between equator and poles, land and ocean, day and night began to stabilize. Storms, once chaotic, followed patterns. Precipitation nourished the land, rivers carved their channels, and oceans circulated heat. Water in the sky was not only shaping Earth physically, but creating the conditions necessary for life, regulating temperature, distributing nutrients, and forming the early cycles that would sustain all future organisms. The atmosphere also became a protective shield. Clouds reflected sunlight, preventing the planet from overheating. Rainfall absorbed gases, balancing the chemical composition of oceans. Even storms in their wildness contributed to stability, mixing air and water in a dance that would continue for billions of years. Water was the planet's mediator, the breath that connected fire and stone, ocean and atmosphere, present and future. And still, water in the sky was patient. It did not rush. It formed slowly, evaporated steadily, fell gently. Its rhythms established the cycles that would define life on Earth. Clouds drifted across continents, rain seeped into soil, rivers carried water back to the oceans, and the cycle began anew. The breath of the sky was invisible yet tangible, a rhythm that continues even today, linking every drop of water on Earth to every breath of wind in the air. In watching this, we can see how reverent and deliberate the planet's creation truly was. Water does not merely flow. It shapes, protects, regulates, and prepares. It is the heartbeat of the atmosphere, the pulse of storms, the quiet mover that enables continents, oceans, and eventually life to exist. The sky itself became alive through water, breathing gently over Earth, carrying the promise of a world ready to support something extraordinary. Water in the air, clouds in motion, rain that falls like soft percussion on the surface. All of it is part of the same story. A story that began with hydrogen and oxygen in the hearts of stars, traveled across light years, fell as cosmic ice, collected in oceans, and now rises again to touch the heavens. The breath of the sky is water's eternal rhythm, connecting the earth to the universe, and reminding us that life's conditions are a delicate, awe-inspiring balance orchestrated by the patient, reverent hand of water. In the quiet depths of the young oceans, water's greatest secret began to unfold. The planet had cooled, the seas had settled, and a delicate balance of chemistry and motion was emerging. Within these gentle, shimmering waters, the first whispers of life stirred, not yet visible, not yet conscious, but already present in the interaction of molecules. Water, patient and eternal, became the cradle of cells, the medium in which life would take its first tentative steps. The oceans were rich with dissolved minerals, gases and nutrients delivered by rivers, rainfall and volcanic activity. Hydrogen and oxygen danced freely, while nitrogen, carbon, sulfur, and phosphorus mingled in a chemical ballet. Heat from the sun, pressure from the deep, and the subtle motion of tides created countless microenvironments. Some pools were calm and shallow, warmed by the sunlight. Others were deep, turbulent, and rich with chemical gradients. In these spaces, the building blocks of life could meet, combine, and organize in ways that would one day create the first cells. Water was not merely a container for these molecules. It was an active participant. Its polarity allowed it to dissolve substances, carry ions, and facilitate chemical reactions. Its fluidity enabled molecules to collide, bind, and break apart in patterns both random and precise. The gentle motion of waves, the rise and fall of tides, the diffusion of heat and minerals, all created dynamic conditions for complex molecules to form. Water was the stage and the actor, enabling chemistry to become biology. Along the shores of primordial oceans, in tiny pools heated by volcanic vents or sunlight, organic molecules began to assemble. Amino acids, nucleotides, and lipids formed spontaneously, drawn together by the gentle embrace of water. Some molecules grouped into chains, some into rings, others into vesicles resembling simple cell membranes. These protocells were fragile and fleeting, yet they represented the first steps toward the self-contained units that would later define life. Every droplet, every wave, every current played a role in guiding these molecules, shaping possibilities, and creating the conditions necessary for persistence. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor provided another laboratory. Here, mineral-rich water, heated by the planet's interior, emerged through fissures, creating gradients of temperature and chemistry. Within these vents, reactions that could not occur elsewhere in the oceans were possible. Molecules organized in response to energy flows, membranes formed spontaneously, and proto-metabolic processes emerged. Water carried heat and chemicals, circulating them through microscopic channels and pools, setting the stage for self-replicating molecules, the very foundation of life. Life's emergence was gradual, almost imperceptible, yet it was revolutionary. Single molecules linked into chains, chains folded into structures, structures formed compartments, all within water's protective embrace. Without water, these processes could not have occurred. Its polarity, cohesion, and fluidity made the chemistry of life possible. Water was both medium and mentor, shaping the first steps toward complexity with patience and precision that would span millions of years. Even the ocean's surface played a role. Sunlight penetrated the upper layers, driving reactions that produced simple sugars and energy-rich molecules. Evaporation concentrated chemicals in shallow pools, encouraging new combinations. Rainfall replenished and diluted, maintaining a dynamic balance. Water rising and falling, mixing and separating, enabled diversity in chemical reactions, a variety that would later support the branching paths of evolution. The first protocells were simple, fragile, and ephemeral. Some formed and dissolved, some combined to create more stable structures, some multiplied in tiny ripples across the oceans. They were carried by currents, moved by tides, and sheltered in nooks and crannies of rock and mineral formations. In every movement, water provided stability and change simultaneously, nurturing life while challenging it to adapt, survive, and evolve. Consider the intimacy of this relationship. The hydrogen and oxygen in water not only formed the oceans but became part of the very molecules of life. The same water that carved valleys, nurtured clouds, and drove rivers also surrounded and protected the first cellular structures. Water was both cradle and shield, medium and catalyst, mother and mentor, guiding life's first delicate steps toward persistence and growth. Over millions of years, these protocells became increasingly complex. Membranes stabilized, metabolic pathways emerged, and self-replication became more reliable. Life, though invisible to the eye, was everywhere in the ocean, in tidal pools, near vents, beneath layers of sediment. Water allowed molecules to experiment, to assemble and disassemble, to test combinations and retain the ones that could persist. It was the patient architect, the silent teacher, the foundation upon which all future life would depend. In this way, water was not merely a feature of Earth. it was the medium of creation. It carried elements forged in stars, distributed nutrients and heat, shaped the land, moderated the atmosphere, and finally nurtured the first forms of life. Without water's persistence, its flexibility, its subtle power, the first cells could not have emerged, and Earth would have remained a sterile blue planet, magnificent yet empty. Today, every cell in every organism carries the legacy of this water. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement of life depends on the same principles that guided the formation of those first protocells. The ocean continues to nurture life, carrying molecules from one place to another, connecting ecosystems, sustaining complexity, and reminding us of the quiet miracle that allowed life to begin. Water is life's first cradle, its patient midwife, and its eternal companion. In its embrace, the Earth's story transitioned from chemistry to biology, from inert molecules to self-replicating structures, from possibility to reality. Every drop of water, every wave, every rainstorm carries the memory of that ancient beginning, a reminder that life is inseparable from the oceans that nurtured it. The Cradle of Cells was born not with fanfare, but with subtlety, in gentle waves, rising steam, and microscopic interactions within the first oceans. And from that quiet beginning, the story of life, evolution, and the thriving blue planet. If one were to shrink down to the invisible scale of atoms and look closely at a single molecule of water, it would seem impossibly simple. Two atoms of hydrogen joined to one of oxygen. Yet within this simplicity lies a mystery that has puzzled scientists and poets alike for centuries. Water behaves in ways no other substance does. It bends rules, defies logic, and quietly shapes the miracle of life. Every drop, every cloud, every breath of moisture holds a molecular wonder so precise, so balanced, that without it, existence as we know it would collapse. At first glance, there is nothing extraordinary about water's composition. Hydrogen, the lightest and most abundant element, pairs with oxygen, one of the most reactive, to form a molecule so stable it can endure in every corner of the universe. But the real magic begins with the shape of the molecule itself, a gentle V that forms because the oxygen atom pulls the shared electrons closer to itself. This uneven sharing makes one end of the molecule slightly negative and the other slightly positive. It is this quiet imbalance, this subtle polarity, that gives water its power. Polarity allows water molecules to cling to one another like tiny magnets. When one molecule meets another, their opposite charges attract, forming delicate hydrogen bonds, weak alone but strong in numbers. Billions upon billions of these bonds connect every droplet, every stream, every ocean wave. They are constantly breaking and reforming, creating a fluid that is both stable and dynamic. This dance of attraction gives water its surface tension, its ability to rise through roots and veins, its capacity to dissolve almost anything it touches. Because of these bonds, water does not behave as it should. Most substances become denser when they freeze, but water expands. Ice floats because hydrogen bonds lock into an open structure, making it lighter than liquid water. Without this quirk, lakes and oceans would freeze from the bottom up, trapping life beneath layers of solid ice. But water's odd behavior ensures that ice insulates rather than smothers, protecting life below and preserving warmth through the long winters. Temperature itself obeys water's command. It takes an immense amount of energy to heat or cool it because those same hydrogen bonds resist change. This gives Earth its temperate climate, softening extremes between scorching days and frozen nights. The oceans act as the planet's thermostat, absorbing and releasing heat slowly, creating the stability in which life can flourish. Every gentle breeze, every flowing current, every drop of rain owes its rhythm to this molecular patience. Water's ability to dissolve substances is another marvel. It can break apart salts, carry minerals, and host complex reactions without destroying the fragile balance of chemistry. Inside every living cell, water dissolves nutrients, transports molecules, and allows enzymes to fold and unfold like dancers responding to music. It provides the perfect stage for biochemical reactions, a place where atoms can meet, bond, and exchange energy in harmony. Without water's solvent power, DNA could not replicate, proteins could not form, and life could not sustain itself. The story of water's molecular miracle is also one of contrast, fragility and strength, simplicity and complexity. Hydrogen bonds are fleeting, lasting only trillionths of a second before shifting, yet they are so numerous that the structure of liquid water is never lost. This constant rearrangement creates a liquid that is always moving, always adapting, and yet always holding its form. It is a balance that echoes through every aspect of life. Flexibility anchored in stability, chaos sculpted into order. Even sound and light behave differently in water. Waves of light bend as they pass through it, scattering blue wavelengths and giving the ocean its color. Sound travels farther and faster, allowing whales to communicate across vast distances. Water is not a passive backdrop. It is an active participant in the planet's symphony, shaping how energy moves through the world. There is also a strange poetry in how water connects with itself. A droplet hanging from a leaf carries the memory of oceans and clouds. The same molecules that once existed in ancient seas may now flow through rivers, plants, or even our own veins. The bonds between water molecules form and break endlessly, but the essence remains eternal. Each bond is temporary, yet the network it creates has persisted since the dawn of time. When we drink, bathe, or feel the rain on our skin, we are touching the same molecular miracle that formed before life began. Each sip carries hydrogen born in the Big Bang and oxygen forged in dying stars. The molecule we know as water is the universe remembering itself, an ancient fusion of cosmic elements that found their perfect balance in the heart of our world. Scientists can describe its angles and charges, chart its phases and densities, but even they admit that water's behavior is not fully understood. It is both familiar and mysterious, predictable and unpredictable. Its molecular quirks have been studied for centuries, yet it still hides secrets deep within its hydrogen bonds. Every experiment reveals new patterns, new structures, new possibilities, as if the molecule itself resists being fully known. In many ways, water's nature mirrors life itself. It adapts, transforms, connects, and sustains. It moves through every living being, binding all creatures in an invisible web of chemistry and flow. Its molecular miracle is not just in its composition, but in its cooperation, the way each molecule supports the others, forming something greater than itself. That, perhaps, is the truest lesson of water. Unity born from difference. Strength born from fluidity. Life born from balance. As we gaze upon the ocean or watch a raindrop slide down glass, We are witnessing the laws of physics performing poetry. Two simple elements bound in asymmetry give rise to complexity beyond measure. Every tide, every cloud, every living heartbeat depends on this delicate molecular dance. A dance that began billions of years ago and will continue long after we are gone. Water is not just a molecule. It is a miracle written in the language of atoms. It is the bridge between the stars and the cells, between the cosmic and the intimate. It defies logic, yet defines life. And in every shimmering drop, the universe whispers a single truth. Simplicity can be infinite. Deep within every cell there exists a quiet architect, invisible, tireless, and precise. That architect is water. It is not merely present. It designs, arranges, and sustains the intricate structures that make life possible. Every fold of a protein, every twist of DNA, every pulse within a living cell depends on the subtle work of water shaping the form and flow of life itself. Without its gentle guidance, the blueprint of existence would fall apart into silence. Imagine zooming inside a single human cell. Around you, billions of molecules move in constant motion, not chaos, but an elegant, fluid dance. The cytoplasm, often thought of as cellular jelly, is not just a filler. It's a liquid crystal, a medium of exquisite precision. Its main ingredient, water, gives this space both order and movement. It holds proteins in place while allowing them to drift, collide, and react. It cushions delicate structures, distributes nutrients, and keeps the cell's chemistry alive. Proteins, the engines of life, depend completely on water to find their shape. Each protein begins as a long chain of amino acids, lifeless until it folds into the exact shape needed for its function. That folding is guided by water. The hydrophobic parts of the protein are pushed away from water, while the hydrophilic parts reach toward it. This simple rule, driven by water's polarity, determines whether a protein becomes an enzyme, a receptor, a muscle fiber, or a messenger. Without water's subtle influence, these chains would never fold correctly, and life's machinery would fail. Water also keeps these proteins flexible. Hydrogen bonds between water molecules constantly form and break around the protein surfaces, allowing them to shift shape when needed. Enzymes can clasp their substrates, DNA can unwind, and cells can adapt. All because water allows motion without destruction. It provides the balance between structure and change, between stability and flow. Then there is DNA, the spiral staircase of life. At first glance, it seems solid and immutable, but in truth, its stability depends on water's invisible hand. Each rung of DNA's ladder, the base pairs, is held together by hydrogen bonds, the same gentle forces that connect one water molecule to another. Around the double helix, layers of water molecules form a dynamic sheath, stabilizing the structure while allowing it to twist, uncoil, and replicate. Without this hydration shell, DNA would dry, crack, and unravel. It is water that gives the code of life its flexibility and endurance. Inside the nucleus where DNA is stored, water acts as both protector and translator. It surrounds the chromosomes, buffering them against temperature changes and chemical shifts. When the cell divides, water ensures that the strands separate cleanly and the copies form perfectly. When genes are expressed, when the instructions for proteins are read, Water enables the molecules of RNA to move smoothly from the nucleus into the cytoplasm. Every message life writes, reads, and shares passes through the gentle current of water. Even the cell membrane, that thin border between inside and outside, owes its structure to water's influence. Lipid molecules, with their water-loving heads and water-fearing tails, self-assemble into a double layer. This membrane holds the cell together and controls what enters and leaves. The reason it forms it all, the reason it maintains its shape, is because water drives the hydrophobic tails inward, forcing the lipids into a stable wall. Life's boundaries are literally drawn by water's hand. Within this boundary, water is not still. It moves through tiny channels, balancing pressure and concentration. It carries ions like sodium, potassium, and calcium, the very signals that allow nerves to fire, muscles to contract, and hearts to beat. The flow of water determines how cells communicate, how they sense their environment, and how they respond to the world beyond their walls. It is not just a solvent. It is a messenger, a medium of connection. Even within organelles, the mitochondria, ribosomes, and endoplasmic reticulum, water is essential. Mitochondria, the cell's powerhouses, rely on gradients of ions across membranes, and these ions move only through water. Ribosomes, the factories that build proteins, depend on the fluid's precise balance to link amino acids correctly. Every heartbeat of the cell, every spark of metabolism, is tuned by the availability, motion, and structure of water. Yet perhaps the most profound truth is that water does not merely sustain the architecture of life. It is woven into it. Many biological molecules, from proteins to nucleic acids, include water molecules as part of their structure. These water molecules are locked in place, bridging atoms and stabilizing folds. Remove them, and the entire shape collapses. Add them, and life hums again. Water is not outside the architecture. It is part of the design itself. Even communication within and between cells relies on water's behavior. Electrical impulses, chemical gradients, and molecular recognition all depend on how water arranges around charged particles. A single ion can influence dozens of nearby water molecules, which in turn affect thousands more. In this way, the architecture of life is not static, but fluid, a constantly shifting network shaped by the invisible architecture of hydrogen bonds. When we step back and view life as a whole, from microbes to mammals, the pattern repeats. Every form, every structure, every act of living depends on the same molecular architect: water. It defines the limits of ecosystems, the temperature of blood, the texture of tissues, and the rhythm of breathing. It connects all life through shared chemistry, ensuring that a fern leaf, a coral reef, and a human heartbeat all follow the same rules of hydration and flow. To understand life, one must understand water, not as an accessory but as the central architect. Its geometry shapes molecules. Its polarity builds boundaries. Its fluidity sustains motion. The cell, often seen as the basic unit of life, is in truth a masterpiece of water's design. A liquid body contained within liquid, a shimmering cathedral of molecules suspended in motion. So the next time you look at a dewdrop or a tear or the surface of a lake, remember, within that simple glimmer lies the blueprint of all living forms. Water builds not with bricks or stone, but with bonds and balance. It is the unseen hand that sculpts every cell, every organ, every living being. It is the architect of life,